Hi, I'm Justin Edelson, and I'm going to be talking about how to contribute to ACS AEM Commons and ACS AEM tools. For those who don't know, these are open source projects created by Adobe Consulting Services. Commons is focused on creating reusable production quality code, whereas Tools is focused on improving developer productivity. Both projects follow what's referred to as the fork and pull collaboration workflow. In this workflow, all contributors have their own fork or copy of the project source code. Any non-trivial change is submitted by a contributor through something called a pull request. This gives other contributors an opportunity to review the contribution before it is committed. This workflow has become very popular in the past few years and is used by many open and closed source projects. There's some initial setup which has to be done, and I'll walk you through that now. This only needs to be done once per project. The first thing I'm going to do is clone the repository. First, go to the project page on GitHub, find the clone URL, and copy it to the clipboard. GitHub actually provides this nice little button that you can click on to do that. I want you to note that I'm on the public github.com site. Unless you have a very specific reason, please try to use the public GitHub version of all of these projects. It's much more convenient for everyone. And if you have something to discuss just within Adobe, you can use the DL AEM practice mailing list. I'm going to be using a Git client called SourceTree. This is a free application from Atlassian, Jira, Confluence. I click on this button, Add Repository, in SourceTree to do my cloning. Paste the URL that I copied from GitHub and provide an empty path in my demo workspace for the project directory. And I click Clone, and now the project has been cloned locally. Now that that's done, I need to create a fork of the repository. A fork is essentially just a copy of the repository, which is for my use. To do this, I'll go back into the project page on GitHub, click the fork button in the top right corner. Now, depending on what kind of access you have in GitHub, you may or may not see this dialog, but if you do, just click your username. This takes a few seconds, and when it's done, I have my own fork of the project. As you can see in the top left, GitHub remembers that this is a fork and where it came from. I'll next add my fork as a remote in my local working copy. This allows me to push changes to my fork. So back in SourceTree, I click the Settings button, and on the Remotes tab, click Add. I'll give this remote the name Personal, and paste in the URL that I've copied from GitHub for my fork. Click OK. OK again. Click the Fetch button and then OK to download information about this repository. And here we can see that my fork and the origin repository, as well as my local working copy, are all in sync. The last setup step is to import the project into my IDE. Here I have Eclipse open, and I use the existing Maven projects import wizard to import the projects into Eclipse. I select the root project directory, scans the palms, select all of them, click Finish. I'm going to import the projects one at a time and build them. Also, I'm going to go ahead and run a Maven build of the root project to get it into my environment. The goals, I'll use clean install and use the auto install package profile, which is part of all projects created using Adobe's Maven archetypes. Click Run. Now it's going to do a full build and eventually install this package into my locally running CQ instance. Now I'm ready to start contributing. The contribution I'd like to make is an enhancement to the Scribe OAuth library to support using the LinkedIn API with OAuth 2. Scribe is an OAuth library which was included in AEM 5.6. And while it does support LinkedIn, it only supports OAuth 1.0a when accessing LinkedIn, and LinkedIn now promotes the use of OAuth 2. Before contributing this, I'm going to ask myself a few questions. Is this reusable? Yes, it's a fairly low-level API. Is this changing the default behavior of the product? No, this is a new API, you have to choose to use it. And does this add a new third-party dependency? No, Scribe is already there. I also looked if anyone else had tried to solve this problem before, and I did find someone who had tried to update Scribe, but their patch involved changes to Scribe's core functionality, which obviously isn't an option for us. To start, I'm going to create an issue in the GitHub project. Note that I'm back in the original project in the Adobe Consulting Services organization, not in my fork. Click on Issues, and then click New Issue. I'll enter a brief description, and click on Submit New Issue. This lets all contributors know my intentions. If I have questions or need feedback, I can solicit this here as well, but in this case I pretty much know what I'm going to be doing. Next, I'll switch over to my Git client and create a new branch. By convention, new features are put into branches named feature/something. In this case, I'll use feature/scribe LinkedIn OAuth 2. Click Create Branch, and now I have a new branch. Lastly, before we get into Eclipse, I need to check out my newly created branch by double-clicking. Now, while there isn't a lot of code here, I've gone ahead and just implemented it so that you're not bored watching me type. But let's walk through quickly what I have changed. Here's the Java class itself, which implements the Scribe API necessary for LinkedIn OAuth 2 endpoint. You can see that it has the correct license header. It's well commented and formatted. It implements the full API that Scribe requires. It also gives credit where credit is due to the existing attempt that I found to implement a similar change. I also have a package info file, again with the correct license header, to ensure that the exported version is correct. I have a unit test that tests the basic usage of my class, and then I've made a couple of changes to the POM file to ensure that Scribe is imported correctly, and then added Scribe as a dependency. And again, that's okay because this library is already in AEM. We have a defined way of dealing with third-party dependencies that aren't in AEM, and if that's something you'd like to explore further, feel free to reach out to me or create an issue in GitHub. Now that I've made these changes, I'm going to go ahead and run my build again to get this into my local CQ instance. I'll wait for this to complete, and then I'm just going to quickly jump into AEM Fiddle to make sure that it installed correctly. Here I am in AEM Fiddle. I've just written a bit of test code to make sure that my URL generation code is working. Run that. Seems to be working, and I think I'm ready to commit this code and file a pull request. Back in SourceTree, I'm going to select my changes, commit them, and in my commit message, I'm going to reference the issue created earlier. I'm pushing my changes to my personal fork, and you might note that SourceTree has the ability to create a pull request, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show the web UI just in case you're not using source tree. Confirm the addition of these files, and now it's making the commit and pushing these changes to my fork. Okay, so this is the last step. I'm on the GitHub project page. I happen to be on the organizational page, and you'll note that GitHub sees that I recently pushed a branch to my own fork, and it prompts me immediately to create a pull request. Push that button, I can review my changes. It's the one commit. Could add additional comments if I wanted to, although I don't in this case. Could add images here. For now, I'm just going to click Send Pull Request. And now the pull request has been created, and I'm done. So thanks for your time. I hope this has been informative, and I look forward to your contributions.